Hello, thank you for joining me on the live broadcast today. And the topic is going to be taking our 8 steps to natural fertility. As we do know, we have many hundreds of you who have downloaded the book, but as much as people have gotten good advice and benefited from the book, we've also gotten a lot of comments that a book is not something that a lot of people have time to sit down and read, and we appreciate that. It can be more time consuming. So we thought it would be helpful to take the first tips and the top advice from the book and put it into about a 30-minute presentation, so at least you can take your good intentions if you haven't had time to read the book and begin to gain the benefits from it. So I'm going to spend about 30 minutes. Just let me switch my screen for a second to find the right button here. I'm going to take about 30 minutes, and we're going to go through. And what you can do is, as we're going through at any time, oops, let me switch my screen here. You can type your comments in or your question into the comments box. I won't see them immediately, but my plan is to go through the full 30-minute presentation, and then I'll come back around and I'll go through your questions at that time. It'll make a little more sense that way to group them all together. So whether you're on Facebook or you're on YouTube, you can type into the comment box, and that will populate into my studio at the back end here. So let's go in through the slides. Now, the very beginning, the overview. First of all, my first point that I make here is that I just want to point out the reason why we've had such a high success rate with our fertility treatments. And it really comes down, more than anything, it comes down to the fundamental organizing idea that we're using. And our whole thought process, our whole treatment structure is based on the principles of dynamic medicine, as opposed to most of what you'll find in the world of fertility advice goes back to allopathic medicine, and even a lot of the natural approaches, they default to a lot of the mechanical presumptions. So, unless you're a car that needs to go to the mechanic, usually you're going to do a lot better on taking dynamic health advice rather than mechanical health advice. So that's just, as I say, a big overview point, or where we're coming from as how we're approaching this and how we're getting the results that we do. Or to say this in another way, to really be in possession of full fertility health is really just a subset of being healthy at all levels. As I say here, the physical health, mental, emotional, and especially, as we'll see in some of the points I make later on, the profound importance in our health of the mind-body connection. The so-called mind-body connection. It's not like they're two separate things that got connected, but they were kind of one connected thing, which kind of got expressed in two separate forms. So anyways, we'll use the common phrase of the mind-body connection, and you'll see what I mean a little bit later on. And the general practical tip as to how we designed the book, how we designed these 8 steps, and you'll see this go through today. If you haven't yet used it, our fertility scorecard, you can get it at our website, arcanum.ca/fertility score. And we generally recommend, if you test yourself and your spouse monthly and kind of track where that score is going, it'll give you good feedback as to whether you're improving on the key fertility factors or not. And more importantly, it will also help you to identify exactly where those weaknesses are, and what the next thing you might want to focus on as far as making progress towards your fertility goal. So let's get into step number 1. And very intentionally, we designed the book this way to start with this as step 1, and that is the really foundational point of measuring your pH balance. Now, that's foreign for a lot of people. Some people have done it for other health reasons. It's a general topic around the alkalinity of your body and how important that is for health. But it's particularly important when it comes to fertility, as it's almost like it's like one of the body's master switches under times of stress or nutritional deficiencies or other things, where it's kind of, as I'm saying, kind of a master switch where the body may turn off the fertility function as kind of an evolutionary preservative mechanism. But just to get ourselves a little bit grounded in the basics, To give us almost a more of a technical definition, what is the pH in the body? The technical definition would be, pH literally stands for potential for hydrogen ion transfer, a very kind of biochemical definition. But what that means to us, or what that means in the context of fertility, is, depending on the overall state of the health of the body, the cellular health, the nutritional the nutritional status, the mineral status, and all these things, depending on what's going on in the cellular structure, that potential for hydrogen ion transfer, what that means is, if the cells have everything that they need, the life energy is just naturally flowing through the body the way it's supposed to. All the nutrition that's supposed to flow into the cells, and all the basic life functions really exists as a function of flow. And we kind of know this at the psychological level. When we're feeling well and our day is going well, we will use a word like that. We'll say, oh yeah, my day flowed, things went smoothly, things went easily. We kind of know what that feeling is like psychologically, but biochemically, that's precisely what your body is aiming for as far as health. So the way that the pH scale works, you can kind of see in this image I have here. It's a bottle of pH strips, and you can see all these color codings. And basically the way you do it, you test your. Usually, there's two main ways you can test pH: either testing the saliva or testing the urine. And for our purposes with fertility, we recommend the urine testing, as that it gives us a more accurate reading for what we're looking for. So basically what you do is first thing in the morning, you get one of these strips, and your first urination of the day, you pee on one of these strips, and it will, after 20 or 30 seconds, it will turn a certain color, and you just match that color to the chart you'll have on your bottle. Every brand kind of has their own chart, and you just follow that. And if the whole pH scale goes from 0 to 14, so the lower half from 0 to up to 7 that indicates an acidic state of the body, and then everything above that, 7 up to 14, is the alkaline. So when it comes to health in general, and fertility health in particular, you want to be in that really sweet spot, like in the low, like 7.1, 7.2, maybe up to about 7.4 or 5 range. Like that's really the sweet spot of alkalinity. And what you will typically get, as I say, when you measure that pH first thing in the morning, you will typically get a slightly more acidic reading, because that's all the metabolites that you haven't, your body's been busy metabolizing overnight. When you first pee those out in the morning, you tend to have more of an acidic reading. But then what you want to also do is then have a second reading after you've had a chance to drink a glass of water, start to rehydrate yourself, start to get into your daytime metabolism. And your second reading, hopefully, typically what you will see is that will rise, and that will be more in the sweet spot of what I've just said, the low 7.2 to 7.4 range, somewhere in that range. That would be the optimal. Now, if you're still low, if you're still more in the acidic range, of course, we'll go through a lot of the further steps we're going to get to today. But all the things we do with diet and all the other recommendations we do have a lot to do with getting this pH back into that fertility sweet spot. So that's, as I say, that's a good overview. It's pretty straightforward. Once you know how to do it, it's not that hard. Moving on to step number 2, the title of this chapter was called "Follow Your Taste Buds to Optimize Mineral Nutrition and Better Hormone Balance." So the mineral part here I just alluded to when I was talking about the pH balance. And the thing about taste buds, I wanted to kind of, have a little bit of an attention grabber. It's not something people necessarily, it's not a way people necessarily think about, but it's quite amazing the way, the whole human body has evolved. Our taste buds, amongst other signals we get in our body, are very highly tuned to which foods are healthy for us and which foods are less healthy for us. So the whole idea of what we're looking at in this step is what's called nutrient density. And nutrient density is kind of what it sounds like. It's kind of the opposite, when we talk about eating empty calories, somebody eats a bag of chips or a bag of cookies or whatever, we kind of know, that's not health food. That's that's what we call empty calories. It's not really full of nutrition, very devoid of nutrition. What we want to get in our fertility diet is the opposite end of that. So very high density nutrition, jam packed with nutrients. And what I'm saying here about the taste buds and that, that natural the detection organ that we have in our mouth, when we're, reasonably healthy and we eat a reasonably healthy diet, we get this natural feedback cycle. Like, when food tastes good, or when healthy food, natural food tastes good, that's a good sign. Our taste buds get excited and we get a little kind of a pleasure kind of boost. We like those foods. Now we have to be very careful here. If you get into a lot of the modern industrial foods, they've been specifically engineered to trick your tongue, so that what is more empty calories, it tricks your tongue into thinking that it's nutrient density. So you have to use your common sense and not get into the factory, industrial foods, the overproduced foods, the additives and the chemicals and all these other things that have been kind of designed in a lab. You don't want that. But as I say, it's going to fool you. And this is actually the reason why a lot of weight gain happens with a lot of junk food, is because your tongue is getting fooled. You think you're getting nutrient dense food, but in fact you're not. You're getting very very empty calories, and so your body gets confused, and it thinks it should be full, but it's not. So it just keeps giving you the signal, to eat more, eat more, eat more, to kind of turn off that signal for nutrient density, meaning you've got enough now. But if that never comes, as I say, we never know when to stop eating when we're in that junk food spiral. So it's a big distinction to be careful of. So yeah, something tastes good. If it's a natural food, that's good. That's giving you the right signal you want, and you will naturally get full and stop eating at the right time. Versus the more denatured foods, those you want to be very careful. A similar topic along this is where the signals of the taste buds get overridden, or give you the wrong signals, is in the case of when we get into emotional cravings. We're eating food for emotional reasons, and we, as I say, the power of the power of those emotional cravings is overriding the taste sensations of the tongue. Those aren't turning our hunger on or off at the right times, but those are getting overridden for emotional reasons. So, as I say, it's easy enough to use our common sense to put the industrial foods out of our house and not really make those the basis of our diet. But the emotional eating can be a little bit more of an entrenched problem, and that's one area where we can kind of go beyond the basic common sense that we teach in the 8 steps of this book, and where we can get more into a helpful homeopathic treatment protocol. So that could be very individual, but that can be something where we can break out of that cycle. But I just include that there because it's playing on the same mechanisms as the high density nutrition detector that our tongue would normally be attuned to, but it's overridden for another reason. I just wanted to include that in there. So step 3, now this is one of the more difficult steps to condense into a very short slide. So I'll just give you a few key points here, but I think in the near future I'm going to come back around and just do a full presentation on this one step alone. We can fill a whole, even an hour or more just on this step. So the key points we make in step number 3 is, this is a lot of the challenge people have when they get into trying to be healthy and trying to research more, trying to learn more. They find they get frustrated by a lot of conflicting information. Whether on Google, whether they're reading different books, different advice, different doctors, whatever. You can kind of get advice all over the map, and that is to say that becomes a big frustration because people, they don't even know where to begin. Well, this person says this, but then this person contradicts them, and I don't know who's right. I don't know who to believe. The big distinction to make for yourself is what is more on the basis of being given advice as a fad, and we see lots of fads come and go, versus what are the rock solid principles, that remain true for all time, right? With human physiology hasn't changed in many thousands of years. We still have that same basic caveman physiology. Of course, we live in a very modern world now, and we kind of have to beware of some of the trappings of that, but our physiology hasn't changed. The true principles of health hasn't changed. And one of the greatest sources we use to really ground nutritional principles. There's many dimensions we go into, but one of the foundational ones is the work of Dr. Weston A. Price. And he's very fascinating to study for many reasons, but just to extract from him some of the principles that really apply to fertility in particular. Some of the big ones are, to very deliberately avoid any soy-based foods. A lot of the popular kind of tofu, and a lot of the popular meat replacement foods. Like soy-based, it's supposed to look and taste like meat, but it's some kind of soy product. Those are actually anti-fertility foods, and the same goes for a number of the unhealthy oils, including margarine and soybean oil and canola oil. These are all kind of on the no-no list when you're trying to get into that peak kind of fertility state, peak fertility nutrition. And the other big no-no that I have here on this list, there are many more, we can go through in the fuller presentation of this chapter, but all the artificial sweeteners, all the ones that come from a laboratory and don't come from natural sugar cane or other natural fruits, other natural sources of sugar. In moderation, the natural sweeteners are good, but the chemical artificial ones are really bad. They're very carcinogenic, and they're also very much anti-fertility. The more you kind of study their effects on the body. So as I say, this is a very, very profound condensation of a whole lot more information. But that's a good start. If you look a little bit into the Dr. Weston A. Price basic diet principles, including these avoid foods I have, that will get your fertility diet off to a great start. Step number 4 is all about hydration, drinking enough water, but I'm specifically, there's many health benefits of hydration, many necessary parts of why we need to be hydrated, but I'm specifically relating that to the topic of hormonal health. And that is because the way our whole hormonal system, our hormonal rhythms are working in their natural state has a whole lot to do with our cells being properly hydrated. When they are fully hydrated and they're at their optimal function, that's a big way that our hormonal rhythms really kind of take their natural rhythm. The things that are supposed to be turned on and turned off at different times of the month, all the different natural cycles of the hormones are driven by the hydration. And I should explain this. I have this little hydration formula here. I don't know if these are the most meaningful letters, but W minus 2B, that simply means if you're counting your hydration, how people talk about, oh yeah, you should be drinking like 8 to 12 glasses of water a day, adjusted for your body weight and your exercise and activity levels, things like that. Given that there's some baseline, something like that, 8 to 12, this W minus 2B, what that means is, all the water you're drinking, let's say you're drinking 8 glasses of water a day, but then subtract 2 times the number of what we call beverages, especially including coffee, any of the soft drinks, a lot of those a lot of those beverages, which are not pure water, they are by definition, they are dehydrating. So to use the formula here, let's say you're drinking 8 glasses of water a day, and let's say you normally have 2 cups of coffee a day. We'll take that 8 and minus 4, 2 times 2, and you end up with a net hydration of about 4 cups of water a day. So you're kind of falling way below par there. So I never, try to force anyone to stop drinking coffee. That's usually not a good battle to get into. But I just ask them to consider this formula, and if you really want and need those 2 cups of coffee a day, well, just up your water enough to compensate for that, so that your net water rather gets above the threshold of where you need to be. The big practical tip around getting enough hydration is something called sequential eating, and that's something that came from Dr. Stanley Bass. And all that sequential eating means is you kind of, between drinking your water before your meal and going through your meal, you put the most liquid foods at the beginning and the most dense foods at the end. So as I just said, you start with a glass or maybe 2 of water before your meal, about 20 minutes before you start eating. That kind of primes the digestive tract, primes all the digestive enzymes and so on. It's a really good thing to do. And by the way, it's also a good way to prevent overeating, because then you get a proper signal about whether you're full or not, whether you're whether that hydration is there as the foundation or not. And then, as I said, you layer in the soup or the salad, and the lighter foods, the appetizer, and all the way to the densest foods at the end. What you get is a kind of an optimized layering in your stomach of how well everything that you take in will be digested. So even without drinking more water than you normally do, if you sequence your water like that, even if whatever you normally drink isn't yet optimized, you're already going to start getting more hydration just from rearranging the sequence of your water and your foods based on this idea of a sequence. So, anyways, that's a quick, very practical tip, but a good way of maximizing your not only your hydration but also your nutrition and your digestion, and how much you're getting out of what you're actually consuming. So that's a really good tweak for well, not just for fertility, but for all health in general. Now, step number 5 takes us into the general structure that we apply to exercise. And I'm just going to mention some of the basic concepts here. We can get a little bit, actually, if you turn to your book, to your copy of Natural Fertility, or the 8 Steps, you can get a lot more of a detailed explanation. I'm just going to give you the overview here. So we have this big dichotomy between what we call slow burn as one kind of exercise, and pace, or another name for pace is interval training. There's other names as well, but it's all the same idea. So the basic idea of slow burn is, when you're doing your weight bearing exercise, is that it's based on extremely slow movements. I'm not on video right now, but it's just imagine the usual arm curls or whatever. Just imagine those being taken down like to a slow motion video kind of thing. So where if you're lifting the weight from around hip level all the way up to shoulder level, you're going to take maybe about 12 up to 15 seconds to do that one slow movement up, and then another 12 to 15 seconds all the way back down to resting position. So when you're doing this slow movement like that, it doesn't take very many reps at all, maybe 3 or 4 within each muscle group, before you have a complete exhaustion of that muscle. And that's a good thing. That's the whole point of that kind of exercise. You want to get to the Okay, so yeah, I was talking about the 2 forms of exercise, and in talking about the pace, that's the form of cardio, and the basic format is those, as I say, those 30-second sprints, or those really tense aspects, alternating with the 90 seconds of the more slow pace. So by the time you get to doing 8 repetitions of that, it's taken you between about 16, up to about 20 minutes. You do 5 minutes of warm up at the beginning, 5 minutes of cool down at the end. So in less than 30 minutes, you're getting the maximum possible benefit from cardio. So between the slow burn is the maximum way to do the strength training, or the weight bearing exercise. The pace as the maximum form to do the cardio. The pace you can do a couple times, maybe 3 times a week. The slow burn about once every 7 to 10 days. So for very minimal time input, you can actually get these really maximum exercise benefits. And as I say, the book goes into slightly more detail, but I think that should give you a good starting point of what the idea is there. Okay, step number 6 is all about sleep. And of course, in particular, we're looking at sleep and its relationship to how your fertility health functions. And as I say here on the slide points, sleep is run by hormones, and vice versa. Hormones are run by sleep. So what the point I mean there is, and apologize for the background noise. I hope that's not overtaking my voice on your end. But the whole when you look at our connection to nature in terms of day and night, sunlight versus moonlight, the bright time of the day and the darker time of night, and how our whole our skin taking in the light, our all the different light receptors we have, all of these signals really trigger our different phases of our day, are different, run by different hormones coming on or tapering off at the different times of day and night. All of that really gives our body the signal of, oh, the sun is up, it's time to wake up, or oh, the sun's gone down, the moon is out, time to go to sleep. That's really the hormone dialogue that's going that's happening as we go through the day. And that's all well and good in a state of nature when we don't have electricity, we didn't have light bulbs. We just kind of naturally, our bodies naturally told us when to go to sleep. But now that we have, all these screens and electric lights and overhead lights, and our houses are all lit up. The problem with that lifestyle is that we end up in what the author T.S. Wiley called a state of perpetual summer. Right? Our body never thinks it's time to go to sleep. Now, that's bad for a number of reasons. I mean, sleep is necessary for all parts of our health, but especially on our quest for fertility, we need that more natural kind of day and night sleep rhythm, and therefore the natural hormonal rhythm, so that the fertility part of our hormonal rhythm isn't getting thrown out of whack as well. So anyways, I'm really simplifying this, but the basic point here is, you really want to recraft your lifestyle, your house, and the lighting and everything, so that when it gets into evening time, you want to start really, really toning down the lights. Not having these strong overhead lights, using like maybe more subdued side table lamps, things like that. Even getting to candlelight if you can tolerate that, and especially if you can, like, put down the phones, put down the screens at at least an hour, if not two, before bedtime. You can really start getting your body and all the light signals to really start helping you transition to more, the deeper sleep you really want to be getting into. So as I say, I'm giving you the simplified version, but I think it's still helpful to understand at least that much. Step number 7 is all about, well, going on from sleeping in daylight and sunlight and moonlight and everything. Let's look even more specifically at the benefits of sunlight. How that, of course, is how we actually generate vitamin D. When our skin is exposed to sunlight. And now, when we're in a situation where we don't have a lot of natural sunlight, for example, in the natural time of winter, when we have longer days, darker nights, that's when a supplement becomes more necessary. It's usually one of the necessary wintertime supplements. But assuming we have a healthy sun exposure through the sun and the brighter times of the year, you want as much of your skin exposed for at least about 20 to 30 minutes a day, and ideally not in the high noon. You're not in the most dangerous part of the sun exposure, but when the sun is more closer to the horizon at the beginning and end of the day. That's when you get this more gentle but still nourishing, nourishing version of the sun. So. I'll leave that at that. You have natural sun exposure, you have vitamin D supplements when you need, and this is a super important topic. We go into a lot more detail in the book. But if you can even begin, to incorporate the importance of sunlight, the importance of vitamin D, and as I say here, the vitamin D is so important. Generally, it's a deficiency. A lot of people are very deficient in vitamin D, but that being said, we still have to be careful. If you're supplementing, it can become an overdose simply because vitamin D is one of the fat-soluble vitamins, and that being said, as part of your annual physical with your doctor, you just want to ask for that in your blood test, just to make sure your vitamin D levels are in the proper range and they're not going over. Now, as I say, most people are going to be way under, but you just want to have that precaution that you're not going to push yourself into the overdose range, which is not good for other reasons as well. And getting to the 8th step, are we doing it right, or where do babies come from really? So, of course, we all know where babies come from. From the mechanical point of view, we know, we all got that from grade 6 health class, and how the sperm meets the egg, and all the things that lead up to the sperm meeting the egg. I hope I don't have to explain those things to you. But the biggest, I think, revelation or important point in this part of the book is, especially when we get into fertility, this has many other health benefits, but we've really learned over the years through our studies and our personal practice as well. We can really talk about two forms of sexuality, two ways of having sex. What I'm calling, number one, what I'm calling reproductive. Number two, what I'm calling regenerative. And the number one is what you would want to apply during the fertile times of the month, at the when the ovulation signals and the hormonal signals and everything. You want to time that for when you're actively trying to make a baby. But then, when that fertility window closes the rest of the month, you want to get into what I'm calling regenerative sex. And I'll put it extremely briefly, like there's a lot more detail we would have to unpack, and that's all in the book again. But the basic idea, it's when it comes to the man and the woman and what's going on, as far as the exchange going on between them. The number one, the reproductive kind of sex, of course, is all about that sperm being released, entering the woman, and kind of going off to meet the egg, like that. That's one thing. But in the number two, the regenerative sex, it's a whole other approach. It's more of an energetic approach, where that's completely not the focus. In fact, the whole technique is really about preserving preserving the male, preserving the man from having that release, so that instead, between the couple, all the bioenergy and the emotional energy can actually be circulated between the two, and it's much more. It's a much higher pleasure. It's a much more expansive and energetic form, and it can be very healing to the emotional level of the relationship. Individually, it can be very healing to the organ functions, the kidney and the whole reproductive tract. Like it can just be a very regenerative, very kind of healing kind of energy. So as I say, we go into a lot more of the how-tos in the book, but I just want to at least kind of open up the topic here, so you realize that we've seen in our work with fertility couples and all the rest, this is actually one of those factors that kind of supercharges a lot of the other things we put in place with the nutrition and everything else we've talked about. So again, that's a really kind of lightning tour of that topic, but just kind of put that in the back of your mind. That is something to bring into your fertility practice as well. So just to kind of summarize it all, the best places to start, well, first of all, follow all of the action steps that I outlined above. I also mentioned above, use our fertility scorecard at arcanum.ca/fertility score. And if, depending on any of the steps we talked about, where sometimes there's more challenges, there's other deeper blockages to the fertility. Sometimes things can come through the family tree, as far as certain predispositions to infertility, certain things like that. That's where you will want to turn to us and go more into one or more fertility sessions with us, where we can use the homeopathic side of things to really unblock a lot of let's say, more of that inherited side, or even some of the more deeply embedded emotional shocks or traumas, any stresses like that. That's where we can get more into a deeper fertility treatment on that side. So let me turn back to the camera now. As I said earlier, if you have any questions, you can enter them to the comment box. Let me bring myself back up here. And I think there's already some questions enter here. Okay, just some people saying they see me and hear me. That's when we had the technical trouble a few minutes ago. But yeah, please go ahead if you want to go more depth into anything, any of these points, or even something you may have thought I was going to go into, but that wasn't in the presentation today. I'm happy to take any questions at this point. I'll leave the session open for at least a couple of minutes if you're thinking or if you're typing. But yeah, otherwise that's the end of the formal part of my presentation. At this point, I'll thank you for joining me. It's always nice to have someone to talk to rather than talking to my my other hand or something, or talking to the mirror. That gets lonely after a while. But as I say, I'll leave it open for another minute or so. And oh yeah, and we do have a question here. Yeah, so the question is on the dosage of vitamin D, and the general answer I give, a lot of it is going to be dependent on very individual, like someone's individual health history, like even some basic factors of like how well somebody can metabolize, their food in general, supplements in general, like that's one question, just as an example of a lot of the individual factors. But as specific as I can get to your question on how much vitamin D to take, in general, I mean, you can look at whatever your brand of vitamin D3 is that you bought. In general, you can go. I'd say even like 2 or 3 times as high as what's written on the bottle, adjust to somewhere in there as a starting point. But again, depending on other individual factors, if you have, as I said, other kind of metabolic deficiencies, you don't digest well, or you don't metabolize well, or there's, even other like what I mentioned a moment ago, other kinds of stresses or emotional blockages. All these things can kind of change how much vitamin D someone needs to take to get how much they need. So, as I say, I'm giving you a very, very rough guideline, not to be evasive or whatever, but just to say, yeah, it is. It tends to be more than what's written on the bottle. That tends to be very conservative. But how much for a given person? Yeah, we can adjust to, as they say, at least twice as much, not three times as much, if not even more than doubling or tripling when you get into some of the other individual factors. So that's the best general answer I can give to that. Um, but that's just to say, I'll leave that at that. Let's say, hopefully that gives you a beginning indication. Um, okay, so I'm going to bring this other question up. Um, Yes. So the simple answer is yes. The question is, in drinking the Soleil brine, is it okay to take a shot of the Soleil and then wash it down with a large glass of water? Absolutely. Yeah. It's not like you need that concentrated amount to have an effect on its own, but it's really about, it's kind of priming the pump. Like you're really getting that amount of minerals into your system from that shot of Soleil. And yeah, it doesn't matter if you have a further glass of water. That's perfectly fine. Yes, yes, simple question. Yeah, this will be available as a replay. You can go back to, if you're watching this on Facebook, in the same place you found it, or on YouTube. And even better, there's going to be an even better replay in a few days, not just the video, but I'm going to take all the spoken word I did, and that's going to be turned into a text, and we'll format that as a full written out blog post. So you'll get, like, for some people are more visual reading learners, so yeah, you'll even get the fuller benefits of that. So yes, and yes, there's going to be a replay, and there's going to be an even enhanced replay beyond that. Okay, so I think that is the end of the questions. I'll maybe wait two shakes of a lamb tail more in case someone is typing right now. But I do again thank you, and yeah, do keep an eye out for that more enhanced replay that's going to come with the blog post. And as I said earlier, I do anticipate I'll be doing further expanded topics, like the step number 3 on nutrition. That's a whole world of things to talk about all on its own, but each of the chapters on its own is probably worthy of a slightly more expanded topic as well. So we'll see which ones we pick up. And again, I thank you, and I will see you in the next broadcast. Take care, everyone.